Welcome back to Baron's New Vegas Melee Guide. This time we're skipping ahead of a few one-handed weapons to enter the world of two-handers, starting with the Sport Classics, as it encompasses some starter weapons and some of the most common pieces of trash that can be used to smash someone flat. Now these are weapons that are for the greasers, or the angry drunks, or the scared middle-aged person. These three are the pole cue, the 9-iron, and the baseball bat. Things that are quite accepted as impromptu weapons, with the baseball bat being a well-regarded one. Both the pole cue and the baseball bat are returning numbers from Fallout 3, having very little changed besides damage. But that doesn't mean they aren't worth the time to talk about, but they are probably some of the easiest weapons to make for the game. Unlike the other weapons to date, these three weapons rely on more modern games to have been invented, which unlike using a chessboard to batter someone, these can't be traced back as far. Although the pole cue is just a nice piece of wood with no fancy two-piece metal insert that more professional cues have. Golf is the earliest one on the list, which is accredited to the 15th century in Scotland, but there are several ancient origins of things similar to golf, but are close to the game of polo, so it is harder to quantify. There are citations of the Roman game of Paganacia during the 1st century BC, or the Chinese Chui Yuan, as early as the 8th century AD. But the game was remarkably short-range, and the natural environment of Scotland allowed for longer courses and the ability to make clubs that would be originally wood, but in the ruins of Vegas golf courses, they're made of aluminum most likely. We could only hope that James II's banning of golf in 1457 had not been overturned, but alas, James IV allowed its evil to continue. Moving forward, pool or billiards was in its modern form in the 1700s, but the first reference to the cue was in Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra in 1607. But at least 200 years later, the lathe and accessibility of such a device could create the pole cue quite quickly, uniformly, and consistently. This all happened in the 15th century, which seemed to be a popular time in Europe for high-class people to play games. But in that case, they used cues described mostly as roughly shaped, not the stone-like quantity that modern ones seem to have, but in the modern world, those ones used in the past would stick out fairly bad, possibly being gnarled, knotted, and quite honestly not very good. Of all these weapons, the baseball bat is the most modern, relying on the lathe, like the cue, to make them onto a professional standard, at least with all the wooden bats. Before that, most batters would whittle bats by hand and have a friend or carpenter do it with them. In the mid-19th century, the standardization started to occur, and several designs emerged, although many failed, with the standard bat and the torpedo bat becoming the most dominant styles. The first for obvious reasons. Nowadays, there are metal and composite bats that would prove quite capable of doing some damage, but the wooden baseball bat is still packing a lot of force in its lever arm. The right mixture of weight and strength has to be considered, of course, when trying to hit it out of the park, but it doesn't register on the Courier's mind a single bit as you go whacking away. Thankfully, Las Vegas before the war was full of people trying to play golf, go to batting cages, and play pool, which means these weapons are in abundance. But being starting weapons, you might end up annoyed at their presence before long. As they're the first two-handed weapons, the special attack has changed, with the 9-iron having a unique one. But in general, at 50 melee weapon skill, all two-handed blunt weapons will have a Grand Slam special attack, available in VATS, which is a more cinematic version of the forward power attack. These attacks are useful to get more damage out of the early weapons for an increase in AP cost. The Grand Slam doubles the damage for less than double the cost, so it is always a more efficient option, but at a small cost of possibly not fitting in another attack. But it will let you punch through armor much better. The weakest one is definitely the most common one. The pole cue is placed around the base game world space 75 times, the most of any weapon, and it is mostly in rooms with pool tables, of course, but with only 15 damage and a swing rate of 1.6 per second, it has a DPS of 23.7, and this speed is typical of most two-handed blunt weapons. With no crit multiplier, it cannot use its 15 crit damage, which is the same as Fallout 3. But in VATS, it does 30 damage for 27 AP, which is a good efficiency of 1.11. Grand Slam makes it 60 damage for 38 AP, doing a larger return of investment of 1.58 damage per AP. As one of the weakest two-handed weapons, this is still a considerable amount of damage for getting through DT and getting rid of a lot of early game foes. The 9-iron is less common but has a unique variant, which is most likely one the Courier will pick up first. The base damage of the common one is only 17, with a faster swing rate of 2.3, which is a DPS of 38.3. This one does have a crit multiplier of 1 for 17 extra damage, which is good because its special VATS attack 4 does not add more damage. For 22 AP, you get 34 damage, which is a solid efficiency of 1.55, but 4 costs 13 more AP at 35 for the same damage, but it will always inflict knockdown. This has a lower efficiency of 0.97, but leads to more follow-up shots or an escape. But at least the normal VATS is cheap, but will suffer against tougher foes unlike the Polkule, which can do surprisingly well. The most powerful one of the three is the baseball bat, which should come as no surprise. It's 22 damage with 1.7 swings per second. The DPS is not too different at 36.3, and its crit performance is nothing to really look at a ×1 multiplier at 22 extra damage. But in VATS, its cost of only 25 AP for 44 damage is a great value for a cheap weapon. An efficiency of 1.76 is impressive, but for only 10 AP more, it does 88 damage with the Grand Slam, the most appropriate attack for the weapon. This efficiency is 2.51, and has a good chance of one-shotting most normal-sized rad scorpions you may encounter, to give the number some scale. Most ghoul forms will also fall to this, not to mention normal men. As alluded to before, these weapons are all still considered starter weapons, with the Polkule requiring no skill to use effectively, and the 9-iron and baseball bat only requiring 25 skill to not struggle with the weapons. Strength-wise, the Polkule and the 9-iron only need 2 strength, whereas the baseball bat is 4 strength. At 3 weight apiece, the 9-iron and baseball bat are not exceptionally heavy, but the Q is at least very light for a two-handed at 1 weight, which means it can benefit from pack rat, so you can quite easily have a Polkule in your pocket whenever you meet anyone. Being starter weapons, there isn't much value or cost associated with them either. The Q costs the same 15 caps that they did in Fallout 3. The 9-iron is actually the same as the Fallout 3 baseball bat at 55 caps, but the Vegas baseball bat is 250 caps, which for its VATS performance is fairly good. But its value is even more realized when you look at the baseball bat's durability, which is an impressive 1,995 smacks before breaking from full, which is only beaten by a handful of melee weapons. By comparison, the Q and the 9-iron have 245 and 295 hits respectively, which if you are fighting fiends is alright because they will usually be hand delivering you new ones for you to use, if they don't have guns or energy weapons instead. As for significant users, the baseball bat can be stolen from Old Lady Gibson's bedside, or in North Vegas you can help clean out the gang of greasers in the sewers and claim their leader's weapons for your own. But doing ghost town gunfights, siding with Good Springs will get you one from the Powder Gangers. As for the 9-iron, you can get one right next to the Yangtze Memorial in the Shack, but otherwise the other locations are well past the point that the 9-iron is useful, like Brockflower Cave or the Mole Rat Ranch. Finally, for the Polkule, you can find all you need in Vault 23, which contains more than 30 of them. Otherwise, you can find them anywhere that there is a pool table. Now, those that have gone to New Vegas the fast way are probably very familiar with the unique that was talked about above, Nephi's Golf Driver. As driver Nephi, who is using it, is placed on the path to sneak up and whack players from behind as they walk past. At least, that is what usually happens to me. It is a much stronger weapon, doing 30 damage at the same swing speed for 67.5 damage per second. It has one of the weirder crit multipliers at 1.2 for that extra 30 damage, and costs a whole 1 AP less at 21 AP for 60 damage, or 2.86 damage per AP. As one might expect, its special attack is still 4, and inflicts knockdown and the same damage for only 4 points more at 25. Giving us an efficiency of 2.4 and good damage to go with our effective stunning. Besides the increased damage, the weight is lower at 1 unit, meaning it is made of some lighter material, but it also lost durability, being able to hit 245 times instead of 295 times. And for those wishing to sell it, it has a value of 500 caps, but it is a solid upgrade from the original 9-iron and actually gets into good mid-game backup weapon territory, especially when you forget it's there due to its low weight. In conclusion, the sports weapons are surprisingly light and nearly forgettable things. But when you reach 50 melee skill, quadrupling real-time damage or inflicting knockdown are both extremely powerful abilities on par with being able to nail a headshot. Sadly, the Grand Slam attack only exists for a few weapons, and the alternate attack for some two-handers can't compare to the power and versatility that is offered by that heavy-handed attack. Even the ubiquitous and simple Polku is a great weapon with that fat special, and is elevated above others even if it's lacking in real-time performance. Sadly, the reliance on VATS means that when faced with multiple spread-out opponents, especially gunmen, you don't have the speed in real time or the AP points to get to them fast enough to whack the guns from their hands, so corners and covers might be needed.